What is redemption? Redemption is when the valorous hero makes his return during the falling action of any blockbuster sci-fi classic. It's when your most admired film studio finally gets back to delivering classics years and years after subpar work. It's that thing when your favorite artist returns with a classic project after losing the rap battle of a lifetime. Well, maybe that's a bad example. But redemption is defined as a thing that saves someone from error or evil. And in the case of the Golden State Warriors, that error could be found in how things were handled both from players and the front office after their championship run in 2022. Nasty chemistry issues between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole accelerated the Warriors' plummet from glory. Not to mention a severe hesitancy by Steve Kerr to trust his young players such as Podziemski, Kuminga, and Moses Moody early on in the 2024 season only made it tough for them down the stretch and was a key factor behind them missing the postseason last year. And obviously, when a cornerstone piece of your franchise walks away for nothing in the offseason after back and forth with the front office, it tends to take a toll on team morale. All of those errors seeped into the beginning of this season as the Warriors just simply could not catch a break. A lack of a true identity and shot creation around their 36-year-old point guard placed them into an unfavorable position in the stacked Western Conference. This simply didn't seem like a Warriors group that could compete with the likes of the OKC Thunder or the Denver Nuggets, or even emerging threats out west like the Rockets and Grizzlies. But there was a little situation going on across the country that served as a light at the end of the tunnel for Warriors fans. Jimmy Butler's bizarre back and forth with Pat Riley and the Heat's front office lingered on for months, teasing a trade that kept us all on the edge of our seats. A trade was inevitable with the suspensions, cryptic social media posts, and a hideous lack of effort on the court by Butler. And it did seem a little bittersweet. While we all like to see star players in new environments, you can't help but reminisce on the memories that Butler gave us in a Heat jersey. Unlikely postseason runs and countless clutch moments in the finals made him an all-time Miami favorite. But as things tend to go, there is always a time for something to come to an end. On February 5th, 2025, the Heat finally put pen to paper and sent Butler away to Golden State in exchange for Andrew Wiggins and a few other pieces. Now, while Warriors fans were excited to see Curry paired with another elite shot creator, there were still some concerns. How healthy would Butler be throughout the entirety of the season? Also, how would he operate and coexist on the floor with Curry with a lack of a consistent jump shot? And of course, the mix of him and Draymond Green on the floor together presents a ton of questions. But luckily, Butler's done more than delivered here in Warriors threads, fitting seamlessly with Steph Curry on the court. I love making ridiculous random hip-hop comparisons. It's like the first time I heard Larry June on a Cardo beat. I'm like, these two guys are clearly meant to be working with one another. Now, the fit between these two isn't in the same vein of a Kyrie and Luka, where both guys are pretty much going shot for shot each and every possession. Instead, what we've seen is Butler mesh perfectly into Golden State's cut-heavy offense. The Warriors made their fortune over the years off of their infamous post splits and backdoor cuts, and Jimmy's embraced this heavily. His underrated IQ allows him to recognize angles and alleys to the rim, and an imposing frame makes him a threat in screen and slip scenarios. Trying to stop him from getting downhill is nearly impossible for unexpected defenses. And don't get it twisted, there are still those possessions where we get those classic Jimmy Butler mid-post touches that turn into either short-range jumpers or strong takes to the basket off the bounce. What we've also seen is something that Butler has been fairly underrated at throughout the course of his career, and that's his ability to facilitate. His 5 assists per game since the trade aren't too off from his numbers in previous years, but it's clear that his status as a playmaking hub has been a perfect add-on to Golden State's high-motion offense. I mentioned it earlier, but the leading narrative about the trade once it happened was about just how much pressure and shot creating Butler would take out of Curry's hands. As cause and effect goes, Curry's amount of self-created shots has seen a dip after the Butler trade, and when you can get the best shooter of all time easier looks like this, it's bound to do some damage to opposing defenses. Speaking of defense, Golden State's seen a massive uptick in productivity on that end. Tighter and quicker rotations are the culprit behind this, and Butler's ability to act as both an elite point of attack defender and also play that free safety sort of role has taken the Warriors to the next level. This is a much different Warriors team than what we saw before the trade, and to put it bluntly, it's been a night and day difference. Similar to how I feel about the Lakers, I drastically moved from being doubtful about this team to now believing that they have a legitimate chance to make a dominant postseason run. Even though their current placement out in the West isn't the most favorable, this still seems like a team equipped to compete with the cream of the crop teams in the conference. It seems ridiculous to think that this new look Warriors group couldn't give the young Thunder a run for their money in a 7-game series once the spring rolls around. This team is beyond motivated and energized, and a trade like this presents as a breath of fresh air for both the franchise and Jimmy Butler himself. I know as fans we can be pretty nostalgic, but a change in scenery can be the difference between subpar production and elite production for any player. And when it's time for an iconic era to come to an end, it's time for an iconic era to come to an end. This is the pill that Golden State had to swallow once Klay Thompson walked away, but they were able to redeem themselves fully by plugging an experienced playoff killer like Butler into the lineup. I'm not saying there won't be hiccups along the way because there's still a ton of basketball left to be played before we get to the postseason, but the Warriors front office injected some life back into the fan base over this past month and revived hopes of yet another possible, and make sure I said possible, deep playoff run.